Hello, welcome to another podcast episode by Johannes MK, Johannes Mathis Conrad, or the Great Johannes as I call my podcast. In this episode, I will finally explain what it was that the Germans were up to during the First and Second World Wars. Both wars, they attempted to achieve the exact same thing. But we never speak about it because knowledge of exactly what they were trying to do is itself so taboo that you can't even discuss it because it would reveal something very important that relates to the existence of the state of Israel. Why was Israel founded after all? By the British. In 1948, the nation of Israel was founded with the support of the British Empire, former British Empire. But why would they need that? I already did a podcast episode or an interview with Mr. Daniel Natal from the Daniel Natal Show last year, where we tried to figure out together what is the geopolitical value of Israel. And we already concluded that Israel exists in order, for example, to defend access to the Suez Canal. I know that's in Egypt, but you want to have a sort of outpost, a Western outpost in the Mediterranean, in the Eastern Mediterranean, Middle East, to capture that, right? To make sure that goods that come in from India and China and so on can flow through the Red Sea, through the Suez Canal, into the Mediterranean, and then past Gibraltar all the way to England and after all to the USA as well, right? You want to be able to supply Europe. The European market has like 600 or 700 million people in it. We need toilet paper. We need resources from all over the world. That sea route is one of the crucial global trade routes that you would want to protect. And that's why Israel's there. There's talk of adding another kind of channel, this time straight through Israel, perhaps even through Gaza, to create a channel that is fully controlled by Israel as well. But why did the Germans start World War I and II? Imagine it this way. We're going to backtrack a little bit. If you're going to do something like World War I or World War II, you better have a really good reason for it, meaning you expect to win something that you will then be able to keep, right? It can't be something like, oh, we're just going to go to war with Russia for no reason, and if we lose, hoo-ha, and if we win, hey. No. What were the Germans trying to capture? They wanted to capture a strategic position that they saw, an opportunity that they realized, if we could just capture that, we would become the most powerful empire on earth. But why? And I myself, if you'd asked me this question 10 years ago, I would not have known the answer. 5 years ago, I would not have known the answer. But of course, a man reads a lot of books. I've read a lot of books about geopolitics. I've been, exploring, researching this matter, spent a lot of intellectual time on it. And eventually you begin to see with your eyes, literally visually. So let me whip up here for a moment the map of World War I. Here we go. I hope you can all see it on screen. World War I. We have Germany. Germany's territory at the time was a bit larger naturally because after World War II, a part of Western Poland's territory was, or what is now Western Poland, was taken from Germany. You have the Austro-Hungarian Empire. You have some other, I don't know all the names of all the countries, but you have here also what is now Turkey blended in a straight line with Iraq. And you see, the countries in orange, mind you, are the Central Powers supporting basically Germany. And notice you have like Namibia down here and some other countries that I don't always know their names of, supporting the German system. But notably, what is very important, look. Just visually look. So like I told you, by having a look at this map, you can literally see what they were trying to do. Germany here has access to the North Sea, which provides access to the Atlantic. Germany has access to the Baltic Sea, covering also access to Russia. Germany, of course, and Russia were building railroads, meaning it would give them access to Russian resources. Germany, with the Austro-Hungarian Empire, have access to the Mediterranean Sea over here, so they can do trade with North Africa. And here's the thing. Under von Bismarck, Otto von Bismarck, Germany had already constructed a railroad, or we're busy constructing a railroad from Berlin all the way through Eastern Europe to Turkey, through Turkey, all the way, even with a side branch to Palestine, what is now Israel, and a main branch through Baghdad, all the way up to the Persian Gulf. The Persian Gulf is how you then win access to trade with India and with China. It's basically the shortest route for Germany to start trading with the East. If you want to do it partially overseas and then from Baghdad on to the railroads to Berlin to fuel the German industry. Now let's have a look at the map of World War II. I'm going to have to open it up here as well. Okay, World War II. Fairly similar. In light green, countries that were later added to the Allies fighting Germany, right? In blue, again, the Axis powers, the German powers. So here, Germany, now with an alliance with Finland, for example, the Austro-Hungarian Empire has fallen apart, broken up into several other countries, but still now they add Italy. It's basically the same principle. Now, Turkey at first was a bit undecided, but here you notice in blue, Iraq is still supporting Germany. And that makes sense because up until 1940, that Germany had that railroad that Bismarck built from Berlin all the way through Eastern Europe, through Turkey, and then to Baghdad, giving them access to the Persian Gulf, which gives you sea trade access to India and China, places that we know have massive resources, human resources, and also other resources. And you see how important that would be today. Today, China is an industrial powerhouse producing your phones and your computers and whatnot, and a lot more, your Lululemons and whatever, your shoes. And notice now, in the Second World War, Germany also has an alliance with Japan and some of these East Asian nations. Imagine it this way. Germany is in a very special situation, always has been. This territory here in Central Europe, like I said, gives you access to the North Sea, Atlantic Ocean, to the Baltic Sea, to trade with Russia, with a railroad system all the way through to the Middle East, to Baghdad, and then sea trade to India and China. It gives you access to, by the way, this blue country is Libya, gives you access to trade with North Africa, the North African markets, right? So these are like the four corners of the world. Atlantic, Russian, right? East Asia, and Africa. Though Germany had the potential, if they had won the war, let me switch back to my face for a moment, if you care to see that. So here's the thing. Germany, because of its geographic location, has the potential of having access to all the corners of the world for trade with the whole world and centralize that under German leadership in Europe. So the German Empire starts expanding, like in World War I, World War II, Second Reich, First Reich, Third Reich. The First Reich, or the First Empire, was of course the Holy Roman Empire, which already attempted to do something similar. Under the Holy Roman Empire, you already have access to the North Sea, access to the Mediterranean, and they're going to get access to Russia, and they're going to get access to East Asia with connections all the way to Baghdad for trade. So Germany has attempted at least 3 times to capture the whole world, to control the whole world trade market, which is what all the wars nowadays are about. It's about winning more access to global trade, making more money, or better yet, controlling the people living under your dominion who are dependent on your trade systems, right? Had the Germans succeeded in World War I or World War II, they tried twice to do the same thing, Germany would have become the most powerful empire on earth, the German Empire. More powerful than the British Empire. And that's a crucial piece of information. More powerful than the present US Empire. More powerful than China. More powerful than anybody. And if they had established themselves as such, it would have been effectively an unbeatable system that no other party could then try to attempt to overthrow any longer for at least thousands of years. Right? Briefly, I will show you the map of World War II again. I need to enable it here. Give me a moment. Right. So, briefly here, where is Israel? Israel is in the eastern corner of the Mediterranean Sea. Israel, like I said, founded in 1948, officially recognized by the United Nations and so on, which the UN was at the time controlled by, the Anglosphere, the British. Right? They have their own country here, and it defends access, say through the Suez Canal, through the Red Sea. Now you have the Houthi rebels over here, down here, causing trouble. So they have to sail all the way around Africa now to get to Britain and supply Europe. So that's a big problem. But Israel serves a certain purpose. Remember, we went to war with Iraq after they said Bin Laden had attacked the Twin Towers, right? Remember, we're gearing up for war against Iran, which is this country over here. Although Iran at the time was under British control, effectively colonial, right, control. Turkey nowadays is in NATO, so it means officially Turkey is siding with the US today. But by having Israel right there, you have long-distance ballistic missiles stationed in Israel, able to target Iraq. Iraq, of course, was completely destroyed in the Iraq War, and there's a good fucking reason for it, right? Iraq is a threat to the American system. If Iraq were to ally with Germany, Germany could then create that connection with the Pacific Gulf over here, or what is it? The Persian Gulf. Sorry, it's the Persian Gulf, which gives them access past Qatar here or whatever, United Arab Emirates, to India, to trade with India and China. Access to India for its resources and for its cheap population has always been a battlefield for European colonial powers. If you go back a little bit further, before the Suez Canal was dug, remember the French Empire dug the Suez Canal, which freaked the British out, because if the French controlled the Suez Canal, the French could send their warships, right, here, because France has access to the Mediterranean. They have harbors there in southern France. Through the Mediterranean, they go through the Suez Canal, and before you know it, the French will be in India. So the British eventually got hold of Egypt. So the British basically took Egypt from the French for a while, as early as early 1900s. And that's why the British, of course, secured their India, because the British were in India around 1850. They sailed all the way around Africa. And then the French start digging the Suez Canal, which allows war vessels from France to have a shortcut to India. So the British are freaked out. The British take over the Suez Canal. And it is the British who then, by 1948, help establish the State of Israel. You have to imagine it this way. Before Israel existed as a nation, as a modern nation, of course you had Zionists, but you had the radical Jewish nationalists. But Britain, if you are an empire like the British Empire, you learn to use nationalist movements to your benefit. In fact, you can even create them. And so what the British Empire did, they understood this, and they created a hardcore Zionist far-right nationalism, and they planted it right here to serve their own interests. With Israel over here, and then with modern long-distance ballistic missiles, you can hit Iraq. You can basically bully Saudi Arabia into submission. You can bully Turkey into submission. You get these countries here that previously could have decided to side with Germany, the German Empire, to give Germany access to the East for trade, right? And instead now, because Israel is here, you have a sort of fortress that says, "Thou shalt not pass," to the Germans. As long as modern Israel exists, a country being armed to the teeth by radical Zionist nationalistic Jews, and with the help of the myth, the big myth, I have to repeat this 271,000 times, that myth, you get a bulwark right here cutting off Germany's aspirations, Germany's apotheosis, its fulfillment of its fullest potential, namely to create a world empire and centralize the world's wealth in basically German hands under Germanic leadership. By having Israel here, Germany is cut off from trade with the East. Right? Now there's a war in Ukraine. Ukraine would be somewhere over here. There's a war in Ukraine. Again, cutting Germany off from trade with the East over land with Russia. And you may have heard of something like the Iron Curtain, which also divided Europe into a sort of free West and a controlled communistic East. But the Iron Curtain, which was, of course, subsidized and promoted by the British Empire, former British Empire, also cut off Germany from trade with the East. This is what it's all about, people. This is what our modern time is all about. All these wars and conflicts that we are seeing is that the British Empire, as they previously captured the Suez Canal, took it away from the French, basically, to disallow the French from ever having that shortcut to India, so that the British, of course, continue even today exploiting India for its resources and having access to China as well. For the same reasons, the British Empire knew they had to somehow cut Germany off from the East, cut off Germany from overland trade, railroads, because there's now a railroad all the way from Berlin to Vladivostok, right? They're cutting off the railroads. In fact, in 1940, the British Empire supported Serbian nationalists to blow up the railroad that Bismarck had built from Berlin to Baghdad, giving the Germans access to the sea and to Iraqi oil. So at the start of World War II, the British cut Germany off of cheap oil from Iraq, and the Germans innovated very quickly with their chemistry wizardry. The Germans were probably the best at chemistry at the time, and Germans figured out that you can also turn coal, and Germany even today has about 15% of the world's coal still buried underneath its soil. You can turn coal into fuels, even fuels for airplanes, kerosenes, right? So the Germans were running on coal during World War II because they were cut off from the Iraqi oil. The railroad was no longer available to them through Turkey all the way to Baghdad, blown up by the British-supported Serbian nationalists. Okay, now we see what is going on here. Even today, the whole Anglo Empire, the Americans, they know they still, even today, despite the mass immigration, despite the aging demographics, even today, under all the modern circumstances, you cannot allow Germany to ever develop access to trade to the East. Not with Russia. And so what happens recently? The Anglo-Americans blow up the Nord Stream pipeline, feeding cheap gas into the German industry. Germany, under no circumstances, may ever be allowed to have access to free or cheap trade with the East. Not with Russia, overland, right? Not with pipelines, not with the railroad to Baghdad and then overseas to India and China. You have to always, and under all circumstances, cut Germany off from trade with the East, right? And by doing so, you basically make Germany a sort of colony that exists now only in the benefit of the USA. And that's all because the British managed to plant their outpost, Israel, right there where they needed it to be.